You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Welcome to episode 157 of the Life and Ruins podcast. I'm your host, David Ian Howe. I'm joined by my co-host, Connor Johnnon, and also Dr. Carlton Shield Chief Gover. We are all back. You're supposed to hit the button that says, I'm back.
Oh, shit.
Set it up.
I'm back.
There we go. Okay. Childish. We just lost half the listeners right there. Anyway, Carlton is in the Dominican Republic currently, or as I like to call it, Puerto Rico. That was quoting Donald Trump. Anyway, and before we introduce Carlton, I'm going to say, Connor, do you have an addendum to last week's episode?
Yeah, we kind of fucked up. We fucked up the order of the National Register eligibility. Thank you for all those people who told us that we were wrong and dumb. We really appreciate that stuff. So read the bulletin. Don't listen to us. Don't send that episode to your friends unless they want to quote things incorrectly. But we were incorrect. Thank you for telling us we were dumb. Please do that every time that happens. What's up?
Do you know what the correct answers are?
No.
I can't off the top of my head either. Actually, we pulled up in Slack. Chris, bear with me a second. You even sent it to us, so I know you're going to shit yourself if we don't do it. Because rightfully so. I would also shit myself if I had just sent this to somebody and they still didn't know it. You're a good man. Okay. So National Register criteria. A is action, events. B is body, people, important, etc. C is craftsmanship. And then D is data. So that's your all that.
Yeah. So those are your easy thing. Action, body, craftsmanship, data. Remember that. ABCD.
Yes, sir. All right. Carlton, newly defended actual Dr. Carlton Shield Chief Gover, Esquire Extraordinaire. How you doing?
I'm fucking tired. That's how I am. I'm fucking exhausted. It has been a long 10 days. And I still have a week more. Yeah, it's a good time, but it's a lot of work. It is way more work than I thought it was going to be.
Like data-wise, like mentally-wise, or physically-wise?
It's like all of that. I mean, when ultimately we're maybe getting in about like 2.5 hours worth of actual data collection and field work a day, right? Because we're doing like 2 tank dives. And depending on your air consumption, you can be down there anywhere from like 45 minutes to an hour, depending on depth. So the shallower you are, the more air you're going to be able to have. Whereas the deeper you are, the more oxygen you absorb because under pressure, oxygen compresses. However, like this field school is nuts for a number of reasons. One, it's the Indiana University Underwater Science Field School. It's an interdisciplinary project that has archaeologists, marine biologists, earth and atmospheric scientists, and animal behaviorists. So there's like anywhere from like 3 to 4 teams in the water doing different shit at the same site. And so for the archaeology, right now we're doing impact assessments for the Dominican government. So we're going to these sites, these living museums in the sea, and monitoring if objects are being displaced or what the fuck's happening. And it's kind of like part of it's a shit show. First day we got out there, these living museums are supposed to have these historic marker buoys. They're supposed to have safety buoys that keep oncoming traffic the fuck away from the site so you're not killing scuba divers. Gone. No one knows where they are. The resort's not putting them up. The Dominican government's not putting them back up. So we had to spend like one day just doing site maintenance to make sure that we were safe. Because some of those boats are scooting in on top of our divers. Not okay in the slightest.
Yikes.
But it's like the daily process is breakfast starts at 7. You have 30 minutes to eat. Then we have morning meeting where we go over what the fuck we're supposed to do. Because like every day, it's a new thing based on what happened yesterday. We load up we take all of our equipment and we put it in the trucks. Take the trucks down to Scuba Fun. Then we load up all the fucking oxygen tanks. So there's about 21 of us. So that means 42 tanks. Load those up into vans, including all of our dive equipment, all of the water. Get that on the fucking boat. Everything's on the fucking boat. Then we got to drive to the site, and it depends on where the fuck we're going. And then while that's going on, we're all trying to get ready, putting on our wetsuits, getting over all of our equipment set up. Then we got to send divers in the water, our master divers, to basically get the right mooring set up so we have the right guideline to get us onto site. Because day one, gentlemen, let me tell you about the shit show the Guadalupe Archaeological Preserve was. Visibility about 4 feet. Like it was turbulent down there. So it's about 25 feet down. You can't see shit. We were all wandering, like we all burnt through the first tank because no one could find the fucking site, and we dropped it right next to it. We all scattered, couldn't find it. And of course, like you're panicking and you don't realize like how fast you're going through oxygen or what's going on. In a normal situation, what you should do if you can't find the site, after 5 minutes, come up, talk to the boat, right? And the boat will direct you. Mm-hmm. Nobody did that. Everyone went through all their oxygen and they just popped up where they ran out of oxygen, right? And so there's people fucking all over the ocean and they have to swim back to the boat. And our dive master, our project director is like, what the fuck is going on? Like he's like Marcel Kornfeld. Like it's a very similar vibe.
But except like when all of the students are on the ground digging in dirt, they're all floating astray in the fucking floats of an ocean. Of course he's going to be upset.
And so, but they were able to find the site. So the second dive were able to get down there and actually like do some assessments. For the archaeologists for this first half, which I'll get to in a bit, we're just basically like doing, looking at anchors and cannons, making sure that they're oriented the right way and then what their inclination is, because we're trying to see what the fuck's happening. And what is happening is because these mooring buoys keep getting lost or cut by somebody, people are tying their mooring lines to the fucking cannons. So then the cannons are getting drugged around the sea floor because these boats are just pulling them and it's destroying coral. So like that's where this interdisciplinary nature is coming in. It's like one, there's some very endangered corals that love the iron on these things. We're watching those. Then we have the marine biologists watching these sergeant major fish that make their nests on straight walls. So they're putting and these things will fucking attack you. I'm trying to get like this inclination where I have this fish like literally biting my face and like coming after me. And the fucker's only this big, like, but they're aggressive. And then you just got to watch out. Like we have a lot of eels at the site, and then these lionfish that are invasive and they're extremely venomous. There's no sharks in this part of the DR. Like we're in the southeast tip, we're in the Caribbean, but as I'll talk about later, the rest of the project, we're going to be on the Atlantic site, and there be sharks, which are fine. But we've kind of gone to a number of sites. So like we did the Guadalupe, called the Guap Archaeological Preserve. That's right off the coast here where I'm at now at Viva. We did the Captain Kidd site the second day, which was a blast. So what happened is when Captain Kidd found out that he's not really a pirate. He's a privateer. But when he found out he was being accused of piracy, he was basically like, he's the only pirate that is known to have ever buried treasure, like offloaded his treasure, set his ship afire, and he went to New England where he was eventually hung twice. And the Captain Kidd is a phenomenal site for 2 reasons. One, treasure hunters couldn't find it because they looked at the documents. They knew where the ship was burnt and they thought it fell there. But our project lead, Professor Charlie Beaker, he went to England, looked at documents, and there was a Dutch narrative that watched the burning ship basically leave this river tributary and float to Catalina Island, and that's where it sunk. So we were able to find it a couple years ago. And so it's completely preserved. Treasure hunters haven't hit it. And that's pretty critical in this country where there's not a single archaeology program, a single museum curation program. There's only a handful of archaeologists, most of which are Cuban. So all the cultural material that has come out of the ocean in this country is through treasure hunters. And through these treasure hunter agreements, they're 50-50 splits between the treasure hunters and the Dominican government. So there's like, I've looked at site plans by these treasure hunters. They're fucking garbage. They're destroying coral. Like their job, like all they're focused on is getting things out to sell. But Captain Kidd wasn't that way. I wasn't able to do as much work at Kidd because while I'm here also being a professor and helping these like run things, I'm also trying to get my scientific diving certificate. So the Captain Kidd site has this wall that goes down 100 feet. So that's where I did my deep dive. So while everyone else was kind of doing that, I got to go down this fucking sheer face coral 100 feet down in this crystal clear water where I could see the top. It was easily the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. I was only down there for like the whole dive itself was 20 minutes and our bottom time was 5 at the depth. But there was this gorgeous, very rare corals that are extraordinarily expensive down there that I got to see. And then I kind of came up, and that was a 1-tank dive. It was a 20-mile boat ride. So it was like an hour and a half to get there. And so what I did, and the site's precarious because it's the current is hitting it up against a reef. There aren't many beaches here. Like this environment, the Dominican Republic is very similar to the Yucatan. It's a karst environment, lots of limestone, not natural beaches. So we had like 2 students like on the reef ledge. They have walkie-talkies trying to direct students in this really choppy water. Like we were coming up because after 100 feet, you have to do a safety stop. At around 15 feet, me and my dive buddy who led me, we just kind of went, checked out the cannons and did our safety stop, just kind of surveying the archaeology. But like that, the current was bad. And you had to be very careful because students were getting slammed into reefs, slammed into corals. Like then it was precarious. It's dangerous.
Oof.
But it was gorgeous there. So once I took my stuff off, I was just helping students direct because our main project there were these palmata corals that students were trying to find and do photogrammetry. So what we did at Captain Kidd mostly is we photogrammetried the entire site to develop a GIS model to see where everything is. Because that's the best way you're going to get any information out of underwater arc. You can't really take measurements. So you have to just do photogrammetry and just fucking map an entire site. And that's how you're going to find your artifact distributions and look at differences in how things have changed relatively. It's a really different world. And you have to think very differently about these things. And it's not like at a field school or an active project where you come into something you don't know, you can just, hey, what's going on? And you can track from there. It's like, you can't talk underwater and you have a limited time that you're there. And so like you are it is just high speed all the time. And we knew we weren't going back to Kidd. And that was the only day we were there.
So you're really given like the small window to do all this stuff. And like you mentioned at our previous episode, which I think was like 151, you said that like even in like the pools, the communication is terrible and you're trying to orient yourself just exponentially worse in that real life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've gotten really comfortable where I don't know anything. I will, if something's happening, I'm not wasting oxygen. We're going up to the surface. I'm going to communicate with the boat and we're going to go back down because I've heard enough of our project director being like, why won't students just come up and let's figure this out? Because they start kind of freaking out down below and trying to figure it out themselves. I'm like, fuck that. I don't know what's going on here. I'm going up to get this man that's been doing this since the fucking 70s. He'll tell me what to do and get down there and move forward. So I have no problem asking for help. To just go up? No, not at all, because some of these places, like we're not going below 30 feet really where there's these mandatory safety stops, especially like the guap that's like maybe 15 to 20 feet. I can just pop up real quick. You deflate your BCD, you come up, I just signal to the boat, I'll just kick over. And then, there's a little bit of oxygen consumption on the way to get my trim back in line. So once I get back under the water, I need to balance myself to make sure I'm not going up or down too much. There's also a lot of oxygen management myself. So like my first couple dives, I was only down there for like 30 minutes because I was not accustomed to that kind of work. But like now I'm able to get a dive down for an hour because I'm like, I have to actively think about my breathing all the time. Like I have a little note on my data slate that's like slow, deep breaths. And that's also helped me maintain my buoyancy a lot better underwater. So I'm able to hover a lot easier now and get that work done.
You said obesity?
Oh, a BCD, that's the like vest you wear that has your scuba tank attached to it. It has your regulators. It has your dive computers at times.
And you said to deflate it. So does it like suck water in?
So this is what Jacques Cousteau invented, this whole scuba system. So it will actually inflate and deflate with air. So to help manage your buoyancy. And then also when you're at the surface, you can just inflate it and it basically acts like a life vest. So you can just sit there and just fucking backstroke your way to the boat without much effort. So it'll keep you up. So usually when you jump into the water, when you first go in, your BCD is a little inflated. So that way when you hit the water, you'll just come up or else because you just don't want to sink.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that takes oxygen out of your actual tank, and that's how it's connected. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So there's little air harrows that's connected directly to it. Yeah.
You want to use that like sparingly if possible, right? Because you want to preserve the oxygen and get as much time below as possible.
Yeah. And there's also like a manual inflate thing. So like rather I'm getting better at not having to use the buttons that will take the oxygen directly in. Since I'm already breathing oxygen, I'm getting better at just like manually inflating it so I don't have to drain too much. Because at this point now, I think I have over 450 minutes underwater at this point through this project. So I've gotten like much better. And like a lot of the students, it's kind of been funny because they're like, he has the highest amount of archaeological training, but the least amount of being underwater. So like a lot of the students were helping me to like figure my shit out while I'm trying to like, I'm sitting there like floating around, like trying to tell them how to take measurements. And, like it was hard for me, like fucking turning upside down on accident, like because the way the air will fit in a vest that, because I mean, you know how air works that way. So like a lot of times we're angled so our heads are down, so our fins aren't kicking up sediment in the back. So all that oxygen's is in your back. And then when you try to like orient yourself or you move in a certain way, those oxygen bubbles will move in your vest and you're like,
Do you use a Trimble to map, like to get a datum, or do you drop it down from a boat? Or is it just an arbitrary around the site?
Arbitrary around the site. So like you can't really get good GPS coordinates. We had a student the other day. He got an app on his phone and got like one of those waterproof protectors, and he was just snorkeling above and like trying to get data. But the other issue is like the way that water refractions work. Distances are a little fucky wucky, and then just trying to get like a straight line in a current is just difficult. So that's why we do the photogrammetry. And since we're pretty close to shore, you can map those onto Google Maps and GIS coral plots. So like NOAA has done a lot of reef and shoreline data. So we're able to map it that way.
And you have like known tie points, right? Or like known locations that you can ultimately tie it all together.
Yeah. And so like all the sites that we work at, the purpose of this project is these living museums of the sea. So these are protected sites. And what that introduces then to the local tourist economy is they also become these scuba zones. So like all across Bayi Bay, there's Indiana University pamphlets of all the living museums, and they're actively like the 5 dive shops in town are like, we're gonna go check out this living museum done by the Americans and see these cannons. Like there's fucking plaques down there that have like the name of the ship and everything like that and when it sank, and it's all in Spanish. I can't fucking read it. But like they're just, but it's not just like this random collection of cannons that we're the ones that know about it. We're actively making these living parks to save them, one, from the treasure hunters, but two, to stimulate local economy and interest into these locations.
Well, on that note, let's hop into the next segment. Sponsors. I think we have patriotsupply.com now. Let's hear that. Let's hear that ad.
Hey everybody, Chris Webster here to talk about one of the latest supporters to the Archaeology Podcast Network, the Motley Fool. Now, I've been investing in the stock market through various applications for a few years now, and everybody who's listening to this can benefit from that sort of investment for the long-term financial planning. And also, I know the hosts of these podcasts can benefit because as archaeologists, like none of us get retirement. We all have to kind of fend for ourselves. So investing in the stock market is a good idea, but not everybody can do it. And look, we get it. The market is complicated and confusing, and to many of us, it simply doesn't make sense. In fact, where do you even start? Take all of the guesswork out of it with the Motley Fool Stock Advisor. The Motley Fool has been around for over 25 years and has been spot on in recommending some of the world's most important companies before they hit the big time. I'm talking about Amazon, Tesla, Netflix, Starbucks, all before they exploded in value. With their easy to use and super informative service, Stock Advisor, you could join the ranks before they potentially find the next big thing. After all, their average stock recommendation is up over 400% as of April 10th, 2023. And no need to be intimidated by financial jargon or market complexities. As the name suggests, these guys don't take themselves too seriously. Now, finances, that's a different story. Their friendly and relaxed approach has helped over 700,000 people move closer to financial independence, all while beating the market and having fun. New members can access Stock Advisor for only $89 for their first year, a full $110 off the full list price. Don't sit on the sidelines and think about what could have happened. Visit fool.com/APN to start your investing journey today. That's $110 discount off of $199 per year list price. Membership will renew annually at the then current list price. So again, check the link in the show notes of this episode.
Welcome back to episode 157 of Life in Ruins podcast. I'm here with Carlton and Connor. We're reminiscing about Carlton's reminiscing. Not even reminiscing. He's telling us the active play-by-play of what's going on at his school. But in the interim, we were talking about Carlton's fascination with where he's at now, and that he might possibly want to just become a sea person. But we were talking about the Taino. Can you tell us about the Taino? I've met a Taino.
Yeah, what's really attracted me to this project is, as I mentioned in the first segment, just the general lack of archaeology that's being conducted here. And the second is really how the Caribbean is really the American Mediterranean, and that there's a lot of interaction going on between like the American Southeast.
Like I like that phrase. That's a cool way to put it.
Yeah, there's a lot of interaction between the American Southeast, Central America, particularly the Maya, and then also like Northern South America. They are all contributing into this melting pot of culture and trade in the Caribbean, stemming from like the Bahamas, the Keys, down to the Lesser Antilles and the Greater Antilles, and the Greater Antilles being Cuba, Dominican, Haiti, and so forth, and Puerto Rico. And so there's like this really interesting influx of cultures and traditions, but the Taino are so poorly understood, and this is this catch-all term for indigenous people to the Caribbean that were all but annihilated by the Spanish. And so I got to do a cave dive a couple days ago where we went into one of these freshwater, basically a cenote. And the cenote itself used to be a dry cave. And we know that through the presence of stalagmites and stalactites, which only form in a dry cave environment in which water is trickling down, leaving the calcium carbonate behind and creating those, jaws of a cave. And it's completely flooded. But what's in there? There's fucking hearths in there. There's Taino pottery in there. There's fucking dead sloths in there. And so you're able to go around this like
Uncle Fungus,
really frozen period of time was just incredible. There's like cave art and rock art that is present both in through ochre, red paint, as well as pictographs and pictograms. And the Taino, there's a lot of early documentation of the Taino with the Spanish. And so the majority of Taino culture history is just through ceramics. And so that's just kind of been the focus, or these really, old school typologies. And that's how people have thought about replacement in the Caribbean. And I've been reading up on the literature, and that's changing, where it's like, no, pots aren't fucking people, but it's like, this is another one of those geographic localities that suffers from a huge lack of archaeologists, and also one of the larger islands, which had Taino, is fucking blockaded, still embargoed. And they don't like to talk to the Americans very much. So there's this like general lack of data transference. And so that's what's kind of got me, is not only like looking at the Taino history, this really the first people interacted with Western Europeans, but then also there is this cultural reawakening of Taino across the Caribbean, where more people are like reconnecting with their Taino identity, and that there's actual Taino remnant populations like in the mountains. So like the tallest mountain east of the Mississippi is actually here in the Dominican Republic. And so like there are these massive mountain ranges here in the country that have preserved Taino people and ways of life they're still rather hesitant.
In North America?
No, east of the Mississippi.
Like even in South America? East of the... I see. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So like the mountain ranges here are part of the Appalachians, the Appalachian Formation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So as you're diving into this stuff, are you finding that this catch-all term, or I guess at the time of contact, were all these groups kind of homogenous in all these different islands, or is the Taino just a catch-all term to describe indigenous Caribbean cultures without recognizing kind of the individuality of each separate kind of location?
Yeah, so it's definitely the latter. Even here on Hispaniola, we know that there's at least 4 major groups, but we really don't know the boundaries between these groups or what the difference is. A lot of it's, once again, based on the pottery, but there's just don't know, like the Spanish systematically wiped out these people, especially here in the DR and Haiti.
Yeah.
Like they wanted them gone because they weren't playing ball. Puerto Rico, there's more known about Puerto Rican Taino than kind of the rest of them. But like a lot of people here in the DR and Haiti, right, they're mostly, they look at their cultural roots primarily. In Haiti, it's going to be more African, the enslaved ancestry. And then TR, they really kind of push that Spanish background. So there's like a really stark difference between the Haitian and Dominican populations. And a lot of that deals with the colonial roots and the countries being set up. Like the Independence Day of the Dominican Republic isn't the day they got independence from Spain, but when they got independence from Haiti.
That's wild.
There's a fascinating video a couple months ago. It's about Ancient Americas on YouTube. Great channel. He does really good research. I think he's an archaeologist. But it's a peopling of the Caribbean. And because there's so little evidence of like pot or like anything remaining, and the genetics are just literally a melting pot of the entire world, like even Indian people that live there, like subcontinental Indian people, it's hard to tell where the migrations came from. So they're like, did they come from Florida to Cuba and then down? But some of the genetics point to maybe from Brazil and Colombia up to Puerto Rico and then maybe back down. And it's like all over the place. But like like Carlton's saying, everybody that lives in the Greater or the Lesser Antilles or even Curacao has like Spanish DNA, but they have everything else, so that they don't know. And like I know a lot of Puerto Rican friends in New York that say like I'm Taino, but I'm like I can't tell them like you look European to me, but yeah, you're like.
Yeah, so the main narrative is that people came up the Lesser Antilles through South America first, and then there's like a Western wave coming in from the Maya. And there's like a lot of iconographic and ceremonial similarity between the Spanish contact Taino and the Maya. Like the cenotes and like a lot of those things are pretty prevalent. And there's not much evidence for interaction or peopling from South America or from the southern United States, like Florida. I just don't buy that. And people say, well, people only lived in the Caribbean for the past 5,000 years. I'm like, that's bullshit. Like people got to possibly Monteverde, but we know people had watercraft to get to the fucking western coasts. You're telling me they just like burnt their boats on land and forgot how to build boats to get to, especially at the end of the Pleistocene, where the water levels were lower? Like you can fucking damn near see Cuba from Yucatan. So I don't buy that. Like it's
they got to
incredible.
Veracruz and burnt their boats there.
Possibly, yes. But I think people have been here much longer. Just the environment here is so tropical and acidic. And there's also not much of a stone tool industry, but I'm not sure if it's because people aren't looking for it, because there are like the cores of these islands are metamorphic by nature. They're volcanic. So there are those good stone tool materials present in the interiors. Now, the outlying parts of these islands are these limestone Pleistocene corals.
Yeah, it just seems like, I mean, if you can see the Bahamas from Florida, I feel like you could island hop and see islands the whole way down to anywhere in the Antilles. Like,
exactly.
It doesn't seem like it's a stretch to say that people have been there for a long time. Like you said, I mean, if they don't understand like kind of the indigenous culture, how are they going to understand, let alone the prehistoric 10,000-year-old kind of stuff on there?
New South, the company I used to work for in Georgia, got like super lucky and got a contract to dig a ball court in Puerto Rico. That blew my mind. I was talking to my boss about it too, who like went down there, and like there's just so much Mayan and like Yucatan influence in there. Like not that the Mayans were colonizing that area, but like that ball court culture and like that kind of just like it spread across the Caribbean. Apparently there's ball courts all over the Caribbean, which is...
So there are 3 ball courts within a 5-mile radius of where I am right now. Like they're all over the Dominican and Haiti, doing the same kind of hip ball game that the Mayans were doing at the time of European contact. So there's definitely, I think there's heavy influence coming in from Central America here in the Greater Antilles. I just don't know about the Lesser Antilles or what's going on in the Bahamas and those outlying islands to the northeast that are closer to Florida. But it is literally the American Mediterranean here. So it is the fucking Mississippi River Delta ends up just north, and then you have a major river delta in Venezuela entering out, and then you have the Yucatan. Like people are getting here, and there's trade goods coming in all the way from fucking Montana and the Great Lakes, as well as from the fucking Andes. So definitely,
it only makes sense that they were all like they were boat folks and moving around and interacting. I mean, I think that that only makes sense, and influencing each other and interacting as different cultures and whatnot. But I mean, I think that would be really cool to kind of trace that interaction and see how it goes. But it seems like if they don't have an archaeologist on the island or or anywhere else in there, it's hard to make those connections and really study it.
Yeah.
Well, that, and then you also have the treasure hunters, which are actually a huge problem here. Like the day before we were supposed to leave here, the treasure hunter sent a letter to Indiana University claiming that what we were doing was in violation of a bunch of shit, that we were acting without university approval. But then rather having the treasure hunter prove his bullshit, we had to prove he was lying, which was because he had no proof. And like we're taking these sites away from them to create protective parks, and they're not happy about it. And like the Ministry of Culture wants to work with archaeologists to protect their resources, because what they see with IU, we're taking a bunch of materials with us back to Indiana, conserving them, getting them ready, and then bringing them back to the DR. So they're still getting, rather than this 50-50 split they're used to, they're getting the 100%. Now, granted, some then end up walking out later down the road, but the treasure hunters aren't getting a cut. So it's like a really weird environment to do this kind of work, because it's not just like the random arrowhead hunters. Like it is like these very large and financially backed institutions that were fundamentally getting, cutting their bottom line away from them.
So they made a deal with the treasure hunters like traders?
What do you mean?
Yeah. He said earlier that they do like a 50-50 split where, they'll make these contracts with these guys and give them half the stuff, and the government gets half the stuff and the money. So it's like, it's an embedded part of this.
Ganja Club.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's not great. So it's been interesting to navigate this environment because I'm like, what the fuck? And I hear these stories of like at conferences, treasure hunters like approaching our members of my team or other archaeology teams from the Carolinas, like trying to start fist fights over it because they're like, we're taking away their profession, but they're just after the shit. They're just after the artifacts. Whereas we're also not only just preserving these artifacts, but also protecting marine ecosystems.
It wouldn't surprise me if those are connected into larger black markets too. So like you really could be starting to mess with like mobs, gangs. Yeah. As you get like really deeper into this stuff, like if you start cutting the bottom line, it seems a little dangerous.
There's a lot of the same families here in the Caribbean that are in some of the larger East Coast crime syndicates. A lot of Italians.
I saw a thing. I mean, they were the first to sail there, I guess. I saw when the Spanish were, especially when they were pulling stuff out of Cerro de Pazzi in Argentina, one ship that went back to Spain, like occasionally had enough money to pay for the entire coffers of the Kingdom of England for an entire year, which is why the Queen was like, Francis Drake, go get that money. Like, go sink those ships. So all of that money, like Spain was just extorting the fuck out of the New World and taking all that gold back and silver. So like in our country, we don't really have a lot of that. So like, it's just like Clovis points are on the black market. I'm hopefully not human bones. I'm sure they are. But like in the Caribbean, it's like pretty clear just from like knowing only superficially about it. When you're treasure hunting, it's like pounds of like silver and doubloons and things like that, which I'm sure has all been picked clean from the immediate ones you can see. But Carlton, I don't know, do you know a lot about that from school?
Yeah, I mean, like I showed you guys that picture of the fucking brick of concreted Spanish silver, and there's a lot of it. That that's the kind of thing that people are looking for, these shipwrecks. And so like the one that we're working on next week, so the students go home tomorrow and then the staff are staying, so it's going to be much more team. We're going to do like actually much more active excavations at this mid-16th century shipwreck. And that's where we found, I have them right here. I keep getting my room wet. We pulled out fucking 50 horseshoes the other day.
Oh my God.
I thought you were just going to pull out an artifact. Carlton not only bent over to pull up an artifact, but it was dripping wet.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I have a Gatorade cooler in here full of salt water that I have a shitload of horseshoes in. So like
horse massacre.
And this also ties into like the horses human society shit. I'm also down here looking for the earliest horses that got to the Americas, and it's hard. But we don't know the name of the ship. Treasure hunters got to it. They don't know the name of it, but we know it's a mid-15th century ship based on some typologies. So it had cast iron bombard cannons. So they weren't, or not cast iron, sorry, rod iron. So those are early caravels. They didn't know how to cast iron. They're firing fucking granite cannonballs. The whole thing is nuts.
Mid-15th century being like 1400s?
Sorry, mid-16th century. Okay. So mid-1500s. So it's an early ship, not quite the galleons yet, but we don't know the name of the ship. There's a lot of ships went down here, like a lot. It's not just like reading a book trying to figure out like, okay, what ship is this? But we just know generally this ship is from the mid-1500s. We don't know which one, but we do know like they wrecked by hitting a coral reef. Then you can see that they try to drop both of their anchors, and then they also try to drop their holy shit third anchor to really stop them, and they didn't. And they hit the reef.
Shit.
A fucking ship carried 17 anchors at any given time. Like there was a rule in the Spanish government, like you had to have 17 anchors on your ship.
Or brakes?
Well, a lot of them were kept at the bottom as ballast.
Oh, okay.
But then, you also just needed extra anchors in case shit happened, right? So we know the treasure hunters, they left their fucking stakes there, but we don't think they hit the entire site. So next week, what we're doing, tomorrow and in the next couple of days, is we're going to go start excavating, like actual excavations outside of where we know, based on how these ships are oriented, we know where the anchors are, we know where the ballast stones and anchors are, but there's a aft half of the ship that hasn't been found. So that's what we're going to try to figure out. And that might have the bell on it, which will have the name of the ship, and maybe some of the more like actual, we can tell what this thing was fucking carrying. But they were carrying a lot of fucking horseshoes. I'll tell you that. Like, that's something that we find. So did they have horses? We don't know, but
that's wild. I'm going to drop all 17 anchors on this segment and drop us right here. So we will be right back.
Hey, Archaeology podcast fans. Anyone that's heard me on a show has likely heard me mention coffee 1 or probably 1,000 times. Coffee, however awesome it is, has some downsides and should be consumed in moderation. That's why we partnered with Laird Superfoods. They've got lots of stuff, but their coffee and coffee creamers have been engineered to taste better, provide functional benefits, and don't contain any refined sugars. So, are you ready to feel more energized, focused, and supported? Go to lairdsuperfood.com and add nourishing plant-based foods to fuel you from sunrise to sunset. Use our promo code RUINS at checkout and save 15% on your purchase today. You can also click the link in your show notes.
Hey, podcast fans. I've got to talk to you about drinking water. As an archaeologist, I've been on surveys where we had to drink 3 to 5 liters of water every day. That's 1.3 gallons, just to basically not die. Sometimes that water just doesn't hydrate you as quickly as you're using it. That's why we've partnered with Liquid IV. The small packets make it easy to take one with you to work out, or on any adventure. I like the strawberry lemonade and lemon lime ones the best. Just put 1 stick of Liquid IV into 16 ounces of water and get hydrated 2 times faster than with just water alone. And now with our partnership, you can get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code RUINS at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code RUINS at liquidiv.com.
157. David, Carlton, Connor, Life in Ruins. We're here. We're now.
Yeah. But other than the scientific dives, we've had done a couple fun things. So we did site maintenance, which we talked about, of repairing all the buoys and making the dive area safe because they're just gone and they're not being kept up. But we did a night dive last night for the bio folks. They want to see these corals spawn. So, I mean, we all just went in with flashlights, but like we got in there before the sun went down. So you're just like in the water as it just turns pitch black and we have flashlights. It was like some of the coolest shit. Like the whole ocean floor changed. So like all the eels were out. There was crabs fucking. All the corals were fully out, like doing their thing. They like watched a moray eel fucking get a fish and like wrap around it. I was like, holy shit. No, it was just incredible. And then there's a lot of bioluminescence. So if you stir up the stand, like all these blue glows happen. So that's just been incredible.
Did you almost get attacked by a manta ray?
An eagle ray. Yes, that was a couple days ago. And I had missed it because like on that day during this site maintenance, I was lionfish hunting because lionfish are invasive and they're all over the site. So I just took a spear gun and I was fucking slaying lionfish left and right. I was having a blast because they don't move. And then we had this special tube in them because they're still venomous that we put them in. And I ended up with like a decent amount of lionfish. But when you're down in the first dive, my buddy Keegan, dive buddy Keegan, was like, did you see that eagle ray that went right behind us? Because like there's this reef wall that we're at, and that's where the lionfish are. So behind us is just open ocean. I missed it. But then on the second dive, as we're going through the reef, all of a sudden it got like really hard to see. Like there's a lot of sediment built up, and I thought someone might have just like kicked the ocean floor. But it was like really weird. Like I couldn't figure it out because I couldn't see anybody around. And as I'm swimming over the disturbed sediment, like I'm pretty close to the floor, I see this tail start moving up towards me, and it has this fucking Steve Irwin annihilator just pointed at my chest. And I was like,
it was at this moment that he knew he fucked up.
Yes. I immediately kicked up, inflated my BCD a bit to get me out of the way. And then once I was able to clear, I could see this massive, like 10-foot wingspan eagle ray that had embedded in the sand to hunt. And I had just dumbassedly swam right over it. And it upset it. And I was like, it was like one of the coolest things in my life. And we brought the photographer in, like, take fucking pictures of this. Because it was just incredible. I was like, how massive that thing was. And how close I came to just getting fucking shanked by a stingray.
Those things are nothing to joke around about, man. Those stingrays are, they took the best of us. R.I.P.
Like I've seen skates, like the little dinner plate little fuckers, but I'm like 10-foot wingspan. This thing was massive. I was just super impressed. And every time I go in here to do that archaeological work, we had that conversation with Maddie McAllister way back when, of like, when you go into these marine environments, like it's not sharks you have to worry about. It's air consumption. It's your dive buddies. And it's a lot of other local organisms that you have to be careful about. Like during one of the dives the other night, one of our dive masters had her hand on a coral to kind of brace yourself in a surge. A surge is where you kind of get rocked back and forth. So a current will push you one way, but a surge will rock you. Everyone else saw this moray eel that was below her, and it started to coil up. And they were able to get her hand out of the way in time because those things have two sets of teeth. So the main jaw, the pharyngeal jaw, all their teeth point backwards, and they're fucking nasty like Komodo dragons, where their mouths are just have so much shit in them that they'll fuck you up pretty good. There's a guy who was part of this team. Like last year, he got his hand fucked up. It severed his artery, and they had a tourniquet underwater. And I don't know what they were doing where they came prepared with fucking tourniquets. I don't have a tourniquet anywhere on my equipment.
Do you guys bring a first aid kit down with you?
We have one on the boat. In order to get Dive Master, you have to be underwater rescue certified. So we have like 8 people at any given time who know what the fuck's going on when it comes to health and safety of the site.
Gotcha.
Of the people. So yeah, it's intense. And then always monitoring water. That's always like I'm chugging water all the time when I'm on the boat.
It's like counterintuitive, like because like you're in salt water, so you're getting dehydrated constantly. But, you know, you think like, oh, I don't have to drink water or anything like that. But dehydration is a very real thing, it seems like, as part of.
How do you pee if you're drinking that much water?
So that's why I don't tuck my wetsuit into my boots, so I don't fill up my boots with piss. I just piss in the ocean. And then when I'm getting off the boat, we're getting back on the boat, I kind of like unzip my wetsuit in the back pretty preparedly to try to get all that stuff out. But I'm not in a dry suit. I'm in a wetsuit. But like that was one of the first tips. Like one of the students here, Jenna, she's like, don't tuck your wetsuit into your boots or else you're just going to fill your boots with piss.
We got boots full of piss.
You know. So it's one of those things. And like I had to learn, especially I was eating breakfast really heavily here. And I learned that was a no-no because I was just getting bloated because, you know, we're at this all-inclusive place where you have all this food. And so like I had to start especially getting dehydrated, getting a loose stool. So I've just been eating fucking Raisin Bran every morning, like bowls of Raisin Bran. So I don't get bloated. I don't get more oxygen. And like I'm not potentially letting out, shitting my wetsuit.
That's important. You mentioned something in the interim in the green room. Are all 3 of us and Jacob Arnzen, shout out, play this game called Sea of Thieves like at an addict's level. I don't think we're at David and Zelda level, but we play it a lot. And you, but you did use some of your Sea of Thieves knowledge, or to save you. Do you mind recounting that story?
Yeah. So we usually get back around 2:00 so we can make time for lunch. And then we have about 2 hours off before we need to reconvene, get reports written, do our reports and presentations and figure out the game plan for the next day. And so today, one of the students who had taken sailing classes, like there's sailboats here and you can just rent them for like 30 minutes for free. And so that's what we did. So I went out with 3 of the students and we did really well. We were really impressed, but she had kept the wind and the way the wind flow was following the shoreline. So we just kind of zooted away from the resort. And then we had to turn back and got into this dead stop and she didn't know what she was doing. And I was like trying to tell her, like, I know I don't sail, but I know like we need to take this other angle. It's going to take us away from the resort, but it'll take us further out to sea that we can then turn the sail again and we can have a better hypotenuse. And we just have to do this kind of zigzag pattern. She wasn't hearing it. Like she refused. So we get to the dead stop, the boat stop. We're going over the buoys into the fucking public swimming area. We're getting people yelling at us. So I like hop off the boat and I'm turning the boat myself so it can catch sail and go. And of course, the second I do that, the fucking boat just takes off and leaves me. and they can't stop it. They're letting out the line to have the sail kind of drop and it's just fucking gone. And the speedboat comes up to rescue everybody because like we were beyond time and they're trying to get me in the boat. I'm like, no, I'm just fucking swimming to shore. Like I have a life jacket on. I just fucking breaststroke back to shore because like I'm done with this adventure. So I waited for them. Because like when he tied them up, I thought he was going to slowly bring them to shore. No. They were basically on like a fucking like one of those inflatable tubes, and he just fucking was whipping them. And I heard them screaming as they're being towed on this little catamaran, and it's just going all over the place. I'm like, holy shit! Like I'm just so glad I'm not on that boat with those girls. But I had this like the second that boat started just took off, and I'm just stuck there. Was this moment of like that we see in this game where like if you fall off the ship's not stopping, it just has to keep going. And I'm like, I'm fucking left here and there's no artificial mermaid to take me back, like spawn me back on the boat. in the middle of the ocean by myself. So I need to like this is not fucking fun and games. So I like just swam to shore and then made it in time for my deep tissue massage at 5 o'clock, and I was out.
That's funny because the mechanism in the game is like if you fall off the ship, which you do frequently, there's this mermaid that brings you back, and you can always make it. It's not like a death sentence, but like that's the first thing I think.
You can fall off the ship quite a bit, like Jacob.
Yeah.
And
shout out Jacob Artson, our boy.
So, but all in all, it's been really interesting. It's really kind of pushed me to think differently about archaeology, especially in the context of, I really like this living museum concept, these like interdisciplinary field schools where you get these different scholars to work together. And I'm like trying to see how you can translate that to a terrestrial context, right? Because we think about Cahokia, Mesa Verde, some of these big sites where like the landscape is managed specifically to promote the beauty of the archaeology, whereas here the canyons and everything are being overtaken by corals and are like actively becoming part of this underwater environment. So I've been like thinking, how do we bring this or develop a terrestrial field school that will bring in wildlife biologists and other people to see like how these landscapes, these modern day natural landscapes, can be protected and help reinforce protections for cultural landscapes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and especially because all the other sciences in the world are better funded than we are currently. So if you have funding mechanisms and coming from multiple places, it seems like that is the way to go for the future. And archaeology, terrestrial archaeologists can use soil scientists, biologists. I mean, we can use a bunch of other disciplines and work with a bunch of other disciplines to really do that, and they can give us money. So that, I think that's a great idea. Hopefully we can find a way to work that into your future research when you're diving lakes in Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, I did my defense down here, which you guys talked about at the beginning. It's like I had to defend from fucking Dominican Republic. Like during my presentation, I did that horseshoe bit with them. I was like, yeah, so like what we're doing down here with continuing this horse research, and I pulled out a horseshoe, and they're like, what the fuck are you doing in the Caribbean? Like, you're a plains archaeologist. Like, none of us understand what you're doing down there. Are you distracted? Like, get your fucking head in the game. And just got like roasted just to me to do like a fun bit of like, here's a fucking horseshoe that's covered in shells. And they're like, fucking stop. It was like, it backfired. But Will Taylor thought it was funny. He was like, okay. He's like, we need to talk about the horseshoe later. I'm like, yeah, we do. But like everyone else is like, you work in Nebraska. Like, what the fuck is going on?
Well, I think it makes sense. I mean, you have to like expand and like get better at archaeology. You can't just like stay in one place and do the same thing over and over again. I mean, you're not going to use new techniques or something if you just stay in the same place and do the same shit over and over again.
Yeah, and my museum is partnered with some of these Dominican folks, so we're like helping them develop exhibits, curatorial practices. So like I am actually down here doing work, and I'm very fortunate that the underwater scientists and the archaeologists here, Jesus.
Also, Carlton's going to get us a grant to come down there and do all this research too. So he told us we're committing it to the podcast that he said he's going to do it.
the amount of friends I have now, they're like, hey, by the way, I'm scuba certified. I'm like, okay, bet you are. But no, there's a lot of work that needs to be done here, and there's like so much room that people are actively demanding more and more help, and it's like atrocious that like the underwater archaeology lab in Santo Domingo is in the former prison of the former dictator. Like it's this tiny ass building. There's open tanks outside that have fish in them to keep the mosquitoes down. Like these things just aren't being taken care of because they just don't have the funding, and they want help, and they're desperate for it, and they're tired of being taken advantage of by treasure hunters, and they want to preserve these things. But it's part of a really weird economy where, you have to slick the hands of, even the tour guides, because if you're not paying them off to take their tour guides to the museum. So there's this amazing nautical museum that gets less than 80 people that visit a month, and it's right next to where they drop off tourists. And so it's like trying to figure out a system that promotes and protects cultural heritage in a very much a country that's dominated by tourism. It's difficult. But on that note, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to let me talk about my experience on the podcast. I'm excited to get back next week and get back in recording and talk about some more stuff that we do. So with that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Well, appreciate it, Carlton.
We love you.
It's really cool to hear what he's doing, because I've never actually met anybody that's done Caribbean. I mean, we met quote Maddie in Australia, but I mean, that's like a different country. Well, I guess so is the Dominican Republic, but we're pretty much linked to the Caribbean here. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Well, I think we're all fascinated by it too. I think it's something that unites us is our love of sailing and kind of like the pirate culture and all those sort of things. I mean, those are some of our best episodes, the ones where we nerd out about that stuff, because we all are really super passionate about it and care about it and think it's interesting. So hopefully we'll keep talking about this and keep learning from Carlton as he keeps going along and doing this. Thank you all for listening to us. Once again, I'm going to reiterate what we said at the beginning. Check out the NRHP bulletin posted by the National Park Service if you want the real criteria. Don't listen to us. Thank you to all the people who told us that we're dumb. We appreciate you. Thank you for all for listening to the podcast. I think this is the point where David says that rate, review.
Guys, just rate and review the podcast. Like, we really need it on Apple for sure. Donnie, I appreciate you doing so. I think you did. Or if you listen on Spotify, I remember you're a listener. Guys, please rate and review the podcast. It helps us do well. If you listen on Spotify, I'm not sure how to do it, but you can always leave a comment on our Instagram or shoot us a well thought out email saying that you can't stand the way Carlton talks. It's fun. Maybe we shouldn't just at that guy out. Let's cut that back out. You guys can send us an email saying, what you like and don't like about the podcast. It'd be great. All right, turn it over. And Connor, would you live a life in underwater ruins?
Yes.
I might too. Depends on how much air I get. Well, I get to drink beer and speak a lot of Spanish, so I probably would do it.
Yeah, that's your dream. I mean,
I'm gonna hang out with Mosquito. And then
also, we have a Redbubble store, so please go buy stuff. No one's bought anything
about that.
in 10 years, so,
Redbubble.com/people/A Life in Ruins podcast. I think it's just Life in Ruins. Either way, get some stickers. Shoot me a DM if you want stickers. I'll get you some. Or shoot Carlton a DM, I should say. Anyway, Carlton's waiting for us in the green room because he's loaded back in. We will talk to him soon, and bye.
Thanks for listening to A Life in Ruins podcast.
You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Life in Ruins Podcast, and you can also email us at alifeinruinspodcast@gmail.com.
And remember, make sure to bring your archaeologists in from the cold and feed them beer. David has a joke, he says.
Yeah. What do you call dogs smaller than labs? Cats, because you basically should just get a cat. I phrased that badly. What? You know what's a joke? You know what's funny? Dogs that are smaller than labs. Just get a real dog. All right. Bye.
Bye.
This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV traveling the United States, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, DigTech LLC, Cultural Media, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Chris Webster.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Hey there, entrepreneurs. What's the easiest choice you can make? Outsourcing tasks you hate. What about selling with Shopify? Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage, Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. With their all-in-one e-commerce platform and in-person POS system, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, 36% better on average. Plus, you can sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. I love how Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/DAX, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/DAX now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. That's shopify.com/DAX.